Cow shields injured child from wolves. The outcome will leave you in tears. How will this story turn out? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The valley was bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, painting the world in shades of gold and amber. The faint sound of a river winding its way through the landscape harmonized with the distant chirping of birds. Nestled on the edge of this idyllic scene was a small farmhouse, surrounded by fields where animals grazed contentedly. It was a quiet, ordinary day, but the peace would soon be shattered by a chain of events no one could have predicted. Emma, a spirited 8-year-old girl with a shock of curly hair and an adventurous streak, was playing near the tree line that bordered the farm. She loved exploring the edges of the forest, her imagination transforming the tall trees into castles and their shadows into lurking dragons. Her dog, Toby, a loyal golden retriever, followed close behind, his tail wagging as he kept an eye on his young charge. "Come on, Toby. Let's see how far we can go today," Emma said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. The dog barked in agreement, his tongue lolling happily. They ventured further than usual, the forest's canopy thickening above them. The world seemed different here, darker, quieter, as if it were holding its breath. Unbeknownst to Emma, danger lurked just beyond her line of sight. A pack of wolves, driven from their usual territory by a harsh season, had wandered closer to the farm than they ever had before. They moved silently through the underbrush, their eyes gleaming with hunger as they followed the scent of the girl and her dog. Emma, oblivious to the danger, laughed as she climbed onto a fallen log, pretending it was a bridge over a rushing river. Toby barked again, but this time his tone was different, lower, more cautious. The sound made Emma pause, her instincts finally kicking in. "What's wrong, Toby?" she asked, looking around. The answer came in the form of a low growl that seemed to vibrate through the air. Emma froze, her heart pounding as she spotted movement in the shadows. One by one, the wolves emerged, their bodies sleek and their eyes fixed on her. Toby stepped in front of Emma, his teeth bared as he growled back at the predators. Fear gripped Emma as she realized how far she was from the safety of her home. The wolves began to circle, their movements slow and deliberate. Toby barked furiously, his stance protective as he tried to keep them at bay. Emma's mind raced. She couldn't outrun them, and Toby, brave as he was, couldn't fend them off alone. "Stay back," she shouted, her voice trembling. She picked up a stick, holding it in front of her as if it could somehow deter the wolves. But the predators weren't intimidated. They crept closer, their growls growing louder. Just as one of the wolves lunged, a massive figure barreled into the clearing, scattering the pack with sheer force. Emma's eyes widened in shock as she recognized the figure. It was Bessie, the family's old dairy cow. Bessie had always been a gentle presence on the farm, her days spent grazing lazily in the fields or dozing under the shade of a tree. But now she was a force to be reckoned with. She positioned herself between Emma and the wolves, her massive frame dwarfing the predators. Her head was lowered, and her sharp horns gleamed in the fading light. The wolves hesitated, thrown off by the sudden appearance of such an imposing opponent. Bessie let out a deep, guttural bellow, stamping her hooves in warning. The ground seemed to shake with the force of her defiance. Emma clung to Toby, her fear giving way to a flicker of hope. She had never seen Bessie like this before, so fierce, so protective. The wolves growled, their instincts urging them to retreat, but hunger kept them rooted in place. One of the wolves, bolder than the rest, darted forward, snapping at Bessie's legs. The cow reacted with astonishing speed, swinging her massive head and striking the wolf with her horns. The predator yelped in pain, stumbling back as blood stained its sleek coat. The rest of the pack faltered, their confidence shaken. Bessie didn't give them a chance to regroup. She charged forward, her hooves thundering against the ground as she forced the wolves further from Emma. The pack finally broke, their growls turning to whimpers as they fled back into the forest. For a moment, the clearing was silent except for the sound of Bessie's heavy breathing. Emma stared at the cow in disbelief, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. Toby barked softly, his tail wagging as if to say, "I told you she was special." Bessie turned, her calm eyes meeting Emma's. The cow stepped closer, nuzzling the girl gently with her large, wet nose. Emma let out a shaky laugh, her fear dissolving into gratitude. "Thank you, Bessie," she whispered, wrapping her arms around a cow's neck. The animal stood still, her presence as comforting as it was strong. Emma knew she had to get back to the farmhouse, but her legs felt like jelly. She looked at Toby, who barked encouragingly, and then at Bessie, who seemed ready to escort them home. Together, the unlikely trio began their journey back, the setting sun casting long shadows over the forest. When they finally emerged from the trees, Emma's parents were waiting, their faces pale with worry. Her mother ran to her, pulling her into a tight embrace. "Emma, where have you been? We were so worried." Emma clung to her mother, the events of the past hour finally catching up to her. "The wolves," she stammered. "There were wolves, and Toby tried to protect me, but then Bessie came and scared them away." Her father frowned, his eyes narrowing as he looked at the cow. Bessie stood calmly, her usual serene expression masking the fierce protector she had been moments ago. "Bessie," he asked incredulously, "you mean the cow saved you?" Emma nodded, her voice growing steadier as she recounted the story. Her parents listened in stunned silence, their disbelief giving way to gratitude as they realized just how close they had come to losing their daughter. Bessie became a hero that day, her bravery earning her a place of honor on the farm. But for Emma, Bessie was more than just a hero. She was a friend, a protector, and a reminder that even the gentlest souls could rise to greatness when it mattered most. As the days passed, Emma often found herself sitting with Bessie in the pasture, sharing stories and secrets as if the cow could understand every word. And in her own way, Emma believed she did. The bond between them had been forged in the face of danger, and it was a bond that would never be broken. The sun rose the next day, casting its warm light across the farm. Emma awoke with a start, the events of the previous evening flooding her mind. She rushed to the window, her eyes scanning the field for Bessie. The cow was there, grazing as though nothing extraordinary had happened. But to Emma, Bessie was no longer just a cow, she was her guardian angel. Emma dressed quickly, her excitement bubbling over as she ran outside. Toby bounded ahead of her, his tail wagging furiously. "Bessie," Emma called, her voice ringing out across the field. The cow lifted her head, her calm eyes meeting Emma's as the girl approached. Emma threw her arms around Bessie's neck, the cow standing still, as if she understood the depth of the girl's gratitude. "You're amazing," Emma said, her voice muffled against Bessie's fur. "You saved me and Toby. I'll never forget it." Emma's parents watched from the porch, their expressions a mixture of awe and disbelief. "I still can't believe it," her mother said, shaking her head. "A cow protecting our daughter from wolves. It sounds like something out of a storybook." Her father nodded, his eyes narrowing as he studied Bessie. "There's more to her than meets the eye," he said. "I've never seen an animal act like that before." She didn't just protect Emma, she fought for her. The family decided to give Bessie an extra helping of treats that morning, a small gesture of thanks for her bravery. Emma giggled as she fed the cow handfuls of fresh hay and carrots, her heart swelling with affection for her unlikely hero. Word of Bessie's bravery spread quickly through the small farming community. Neighbors stopped by to hear the story, their reactions ranging from disbelief to admiration. "A cow?" Mr. Jenkins, the next-door farmer, asked incredulously. "You're telling me a cow scared off a pack of wolves?" Emma recounted the tale with enthusiasm, her eyes shining as she described how Bessie had charged into the clearing, her horns gleaming and her hooves thundering against the ground. Toby barked in agreement, as if to confirm every word. "Well, I'll be," Mr. Jenkins said, shaking his head. "I've never heard of such a thing. You've got yourself a special animal there, that's for sure." Despite the admiration and praise, Emma noticed that Bessie remained the same calm, gentle presence she had always been. The cow didn't seem to care about the attention, her focus on grazing and napping in the shade. But Emma knew there was more to her than met the eye. She began spending more time with Bessie, bringing her snacks and talking to her about everything from school to her favorite books. "You're my best friend," Emma said one afternoon as she sat beside Bessie in the pasture. "I don't know what I would have done without you." The cow responded with a soft moo, her eyes closing as she basked in the sunlight. Emma smiled, feeling a sense of peace she had never known before. One evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, Emma's father spoke up. "We need to be more vigilant," he said, his tone serious. "The wolves came too close for comfort. I've set up traps near the forest, just in case they come back." Emma's heart sank at the thought of the wolves being hurt. She remembered their hungry eyes and the desperation in their movements. "Do we have to hurt them?" she asked softly. "Maybe they were just hungry. Maybe they won't come back." Her father sighed, his expression softening. I understand how you feel, Emma, but we have to protect the farm. We can't take any chances. Emma nodded reluctantly, her mind already racing with ideas. She didn't want the wolves to be hurt, but she also didn't want to put her family in danger. She decided to keep an eye on the traps, just in case. The next day, Emma set out early with Toby by her side. She followed the edge of the forest, her eyes scanning the ground for any signs of the traps her father had set. She found them easily, metal cages hidden beneath leaves and branches, their jaws poised to snap shut on anything that wandered too close. Emma felt a pang of sadness as she imagined the wolves being caught in such cruel contraptions. She decided to check the traps every day, hoping she could intervene if any of the animals got too close. Toby barked softly, as if to reassure her that she was doing the right thing. As the days passed, Emma grew more vigilant. She visited the traps in the morning and again in the evening, heart racing with a mix of fear and determination. Each time she found the traps empty, she felt a surge of relief. But she knew it was only a matter of time before something or someone got caught. Her fears were realized one evening when she heard a commotion coming from the forest. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the farm as she ran toward the sound. Toby barked loudly, his pace matching hers as they sprinted to the source of the noise. When they reached the trap, Emma's heart sank. One of the wolves was caught, its leg clamped tightly in the metal jaws. The animal growled and snapped, its eyes wild with pain and fear. Emma hesitated, her mind racing. She knew she couldn't leave it there, but freeing it would be dangerous. "Stay back, Toby," she whispered, her voice trembling. She approached slowly, her hand shaking as she reached for the trap. The wolf snarled, its teeth bared, but Emma forced herself to stay calm. "Easy," she said softly, her voice steady despite her fear. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to help." The wolf growled again, its body tensing as she knelt beside it. Emma took a deep breath and pressed down on the trap's release mechanism, the metal jaws snapping open with a loud click. The wolf yelped as it pulled its leg free, stumbling back a few steps before collapsing. Emma froze, unsure of what to do next. The wolf's eyes met hers, its gaze filled with a mixture of pain and confusion. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a piece of bread she had brought for Toby. "Here," she said, holding it out. The wolf sniffed the air, its body still tense as it considered her offer. Slowly, it limped forward, taking the bread from her hand with surprising gentleness. Emma watched in awe as the wolf ate, its sharp teeth tearing into the bread. Toby growled softly, his body pressed against Emma's leg as he watched the wolf warily. "It's okay, Toby," she said, placing a reassuring hand on his head. "I think it understands we're not going to hurt it." The wolf finished the bread and looked at Emma again, its eyes softer now. For a moment, it stood still, its gaze locked with hers. Then, with a low growl, it turned and disappeared into the forest, its limping figure swallowed by the shadows. Emma let out a shaky breath, her body trembling from the adrenaline. Toby barked softly, his tail wagging as if to congratulate her. "We did it," she said, a small smile breaking across her face. "We saved it." When Emma returned home, she decided not to tell her parents about what had happened. She knew they wouldn't understand. They would see her actions as reckless, not brave. But she felt a deep sense of pride in what she had done, a belief that she had made a difference. Over the next few days, Emma continued to check the traps, but she never saw the wolf again. She hoped it had returned to its pack, safe and sound. And though she knew the danger was still out there, she felt a newfound sense of courage. If Bessie could face down a pack of wolves, then so could she. Life on the farm continued with its usual rhythm, but something had shifted for Emma. She no longer saw the wolves as villains. Instead, she saw them as creatures struggling to survive in a harsh world, much like any other animal. Her decision to save the trapped wolf felt right, even though she knew her parents wouldn't agree. Bessie, as always, seemed to understand. The cow would stand with Emma at the edge of the pasture, gazing out at the forest as if she, too, were waiting for something. One crisp morning, Emma stood by the fence, tossing a ball for Toby. The golden retriever bounded after it, his joyful barks echoing in the still air. "Good boy, Toby." Emma cheered as the dog returned with the ball, his tail wagging furiously. She was about to throw it again when a movement in the forest caught her eye. Her heart skipped a beat as she saw a figure emerge from the shadows. It was the wolf she had freed, its sleek coat marred by the faint scar of its injury. Emma froze, her hand tightening on the ball. Toby growled softly, his ears pinned back as he stood protectively in front of her. "It's okay, Toby," Emma said, her voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. She stepped forward, her eyes locked on the wolf. The animal stopped at the edge of the trees, its posture cautious but not threatening. Emma could see the intelligence in its eyes, the same look it had given her when she freed it from the trap. She knelt down, her movements slow and deliberate. "Hey there," she said softly. "It's you, isn't it? You're the one I helped." The wolf tilted its head, its ears flicking forward as if it understood her words. Emma reached into her pocket and pulled out a piece of bread, holding it out in her open palm. The wolf hesitated, its nose twitching as it sniffed the air. Slowly, it stepped closer, its movements careful and deliberate. Toby barked once, but Emma hushed him with a gentle pat. The wolf stopped just a few feet away, its golden eyes meeting Emma's. She held her breath as it leaned forward, its sharp teeth gently taking the bread from her hand. Emma's heart swelled with a mixture of awe and pride. The wolf chewed the bread, its eyes never leaving hers. For a moment, it felt as though they were communicating on a level beyond words, a silent understanding that bridged the gap between their worlds. When the wolf finished eating, it stepped back, its posture relaxed but still watchful. "Thank you," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. The wolf let out a low rumble, almost like a purr, before turning and disappearing back into the forest. Emma stayed kneeling by the fence, her mind racing with the significance of what had just happened. Toby licked her hand, his tail wagging as if to reassure her that everything was okay. That night, as Emma lay in bed, she couldn't stop thinking about the wolf. She wondered if it had told the rest of its pack about her, if they now saw her as a friend rather than a threat. She smiled at the thought, her eyelids growing heavy as sleep overtook her. The next few days passed without incident. Emma continued her daily routine, helping her parents with chores and spending time with Bessie in the pasture. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing, a sense of anticipation that lingered at the edge of her thoughts. One afternoon, as she walked along the edge of the forest, she noticed something unusual. A small bundle of fur lay nestled among the leaves, its tiny body trembling with every breath. Emma's heart clenched as she realized it was a wolf pup, its golden eyes wide with fear. The pup whimpered as Emma knelt beside it, her hands hovering uncertainly. "Hey there, little one," she said softly. "Where's your family?" The pup didn't respond, its gaze darting around as if searching for something or someone. Emma looked around, her eyes scanning the trees for any sign of the pack. But the forest was silent, the usual rustling of leaves and chirping of birds conspicuously absent. She felt a pang of worry as she realized the pup was alone, its fragile body exposed to the dangers of the wild. Without hesitation, Emma scooped the pup into her arms, cradling it against her chest. The little creature trembled but didn't resist, its head resting against her shoulder. "It's okay," Emma murmured. "I'll take care of you." Toby barked softly, his tail wagging as he sniffed the pup. Emma smiled, her heart warming at the sight of her loyal dog, showing kindness to the vulnerable animal. Together, they made their way back to the farmhouse, the pup's tiny breaths warm against Emma's skin. When she reached the house, her parents were waiting on the porch. Her mother's eyes widened as she saw the bundle in Emma's arms. "Emma, what is that?" she asked, her voice tinged with alarm. "It's a wolf pup," Emma said, her tone firm but gentle. "I found it by the forest. It's all alone, and it's scared." Her father frowned, his arms crossed over his chest. "Emma, we can't keep a wolf. It's dangerous." "It's just a baby," Emma protested. "It needs our help. Please, Dad. Just until it's strong enough to go back to its pack." Her parents exchanged a look, their expressions a mixture of concern and reluctance. Finally, her mother sighed. "All right," she said, "but only until it's healthy enough to survive on its own. After that, it has to go back to the wild." Emma nodded, relief flooding her chest. "Thank you," she said, her voice brimming with gratitude. She carried the pup inside, carefully placing it in a soft blanket near the fireplace. Toby lay beside it, his presence a comforting warmth for the little creature. Over the next few days, Emma devoted herself to caring for the pup. She fed it small pieces of meat, her heart swelling as she watched it grow stronger. The pup's golden eyes began to lose their fear, replaced by a curious spark that reminded Emma of the wolf she had freed. As the pup grew, it became clear that it was no ordinary wolf. Its sharp intelligence and gentle demeanor set it apart, endearing it to Emma and even winning over her skeptical parents. They began calling it Luna, a name Emma chose because of the way its golden eyes glimmered like the moonlight. One evening, as Emma sat with Luna on the porch, she heard a familiar sound, a low, rumbling howl that sent shivers down her spine. She looked toward the forest, her breath catching as she saw the silhouette of a wolf standing at the edge of the trees. It was the wolf she had saved, its presence a mixture of awe and reassurance. Luna perked up, her ears swiveling toward the sound. Emma watched in amazement as the pup let out a tiny, high-pitched howl in response. The larger wolf stepped closer, its golden eyes fixed on Luna. Emma stood, her heart pounding as she realized what was happening. The wolf had come for Luna. She knelt beside the pup, her hands trembling as she stroked its soft fur. "This is your family," she whispered. "You belong with them." Luna looked up at Emma, her golden eyes filled with trust and affection. Emma's heart ached as she picked up the pup, carrying it to the edge of the forest. The larger wolf watched her approach, its posture calm but alert. Emma placed Luna on the ground, her hands lingering for a moment before she stepped back. The pup looked at her, then at the wolf, its tiny body quivering with indecision. "Go on," Emma said, her voice breaking. "It's okay." Luna hesitated for a moment longer before trotting toward the larger wolf. The adult nuzzled the pup gently, its body relaxing as it reunited with its kin. Emma watched with tears in her eyes as the two wolves disappeared into the forest, their forms blending into the shadows. Toby pressed against her leg, his warm presence a comfort as she wiped her tears. "She'll be okay," Emma whispered, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. "She's where she belongs." As the moon rose high above the farm, its silver light casting a serene glow, Emma felt a deep sense of peace. She had given Luna the chance to survive, and in doing so, she had found a strength within herself she hadn't known existed. The days that followed Luna's return to the wild were bittersweet for Emma. Though she missed the pup's playful energy and warm presence, she found solace in the knowledge that Luna was back with her family. Still, she often found herself standing at the edge of the forest, gazing into the trees as if hoping for a glimpse of the wolves. Bessie, ever the calm and steady presence, stood by Emma's side during these quiet moments. The cow seemed to sense the girl's mixed emotions, nuzzling her gently as if to say, "It's all right. You did the right thing." Toby, too, remained close, his loyalty unwavering. One crisp autumn morning, as Emma fed Bessie in the pasture, she heard a distant sound that made her heart skip a beat, a low, mournful howl echoing through the forest. She froze, her ears straining to catch the sound again. When it came, louder this time, she knew without a doubt that it was Luna. Without a second thought, Emma ran toward the forest, Toby barking excitedly as he followed her. Bessie mooed loudly, but Emma was already out of earshot, her feet carrying her toward the source of the howls. She pushed through the underbrush, her heart racing as she called out, "Luna, where are you?" The forest seemed alive with sound, the rustling of leaves, the distant chirping of birds, and the steady rhythm of her own breathing. But above it all was Luna's howl, guiding her deeper into the woods. Finally, she reached a small clearing, her breath catching as she spotted the pup. Luna was standing near the edge of the clearing, her head thrown back as she howled toward the sky. Beside her was the adult wolf, the one Emma had freed from the trap. But something was wrong. The larger wolf was limping, its body marked with fresh wounds. Emma stepped closer, her heart aching at the sight. "Luna," she called softly, her voice steady but filled with concern. The pup turned toward her, its golden eyes lighting up as it recognized her. It barked once, a sharp, urgent sound that made Emma quicken her pace. The adult wolf growled softly as Emma approached, but didn't move to stop her. She knelt beside it, her hands trembling as she examined its injuries. "You're hurt," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "What happened?" The wolf's golden eyes met hers, and for a moment, Emma felt as though it was trying to tell her something. Luna whined softly, nuzzling the larger wolf as if to comfort it. Emma looked around, her mind racing. She couldn't leave them here, not like this. With gentle hands, Emma tore strips of fabric from her shirt, using them to bind the wolf's wounds. The animal flinched at first but soon relaxed under her touch, its body leaning into her as if it trusted her completely. "We'll get you home," she said firmly. "You'll be safe there." She stood, her eyes scanning the forest as she tried to figure out how to transport the injured wolf. Toby barked, drawing her attention to a large branch lying nearby. Emma nodded, her mind forming a plan. "Good idea, Toby," she said, her voice filled with determination. Using the branch and some vines she found nearby, Emma fashioned a makeshift stretcher. It wasn't perfect, but it would have to do. She coaxed the wolf onto the stretcher, her heart pounding as she realized how heavy it was. "Come on, Toby," she said, gripping one end of the branch. "We have to get back to the farm." The journey back was arduous, the weight of the wolf testing Emma's strength with every step. Toby stayed by her side, his tail wagging as if to encourage her. Luna followed closely, her golden eyes darting around as she watched for any signs of danger. When they finally emerged from the forest, Emma's parents were waiting, their expressions a mix of shock and concern. "Emma," her mother cried, running toward her. "What are you doing?" "What is that?" "It's the wolf," Emma said, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "It's hurt. I couldn't leave it there." Her father frowned, his arms crossed over his chest. "Emma, we can't bring a wolf onto the farm. It's too dangerous." "Please, Dad," Emma pleaded, her eyes brimming with tears. "It's hurt. It needs our help. I promise it won't hurt anyone." Her father hesitated, his gaze shifting to the injured wolf. It looked up at him, its golden eyes filled with pain but also a strange, quiet dignity. Finally, he sighed. "All right," he said, "but it stays in the barn. And if it shows any signs of aggression, it goes back to the forest." "Thank you," Emma said, her voice filled with gratitude. She and her father carried the wolf to the barn, laying it gently on a bed of hay. Luna curled up beside it, her small body pressed against the larger wolf as if to keep it warm. Over the next few days, Emma devoted herself to caring for the wolf. She cleaned its wounds, fed it scraps of meat, and talked to it in soothing tones. Slowly but surely, the animal began to recover, its strength returning with each passing day. Luna, ever the loyal companion, stayed by its side, her presence a constant source of comfort. Emma's parents watched from a distance, their initial skepticism giving way to quiet admiration. They couldn't deny the bond that had formed between their daughter and the wolves, a bond that seemed to transcend logic and reason. One evening, as Emma sat in the barn with the wolves, her father joined her, his expression soft. "You've got a good heart, Emma," he said, his voice filled with pride. "I don't know many people who would do what you've done." Emma smiled, her hand resting on Luna's soft fur. "I just wanted to help," she said simply. "They're not so different from us. They're just trying to survive." Her father nodded, his gaze shifting to the larger wolf. "It's almost ready to go back to the wild," he said. "When the time comes, we'll let it go." Emma's heart ached at the thought of saying goodbye, but she knew it was the right thing to do. The wolves belonged in the forest, where they could live as they were meant to. Still, she promised herself that she would cherish every moment she had with them. The night of the wolves' departure came sooner than Emma expected. The larger wolf was fully healed, its golden eyes sharp and alert as it stood beside Luna in the barn. Emma knelt beside them, her hands trembling as she stroked their fur. "I'll miss you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But I'm so glad you came into my life." The wolves seemed to understand. The larger wolf nuzzled Emma gently, its warm breath a comfort against her skin. Luna licked her hand, her golden eyes filled with trust and affection. Emma's parents stood nearby, their expression a mix of pride and sadness. Her father opened the barn doors, the cool night air filling the space as the wolves stepped outside. They paused at the edge of the pasture, their forms silhouetted against the moonlit sky. Emma watched as the wolves turned to face her one last time. "Goodbye," she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. "Be safe." The wolves let out a low howl, their voices blending into a hauntingly beautiful harmony. Then, with a final look at Emma, they disappeared into the forest, their movements graceful and silent. As the barn doors closed, Emma felt a mixture of sadness and peace. She had done everything she could for the wolves, and in doing so, she had discovered a strength within herself she hadn't known existed. She knew she would never forget them, and she hoped they would never forget her. The days following the wolves' departure were quieter than Emma had anticipated. She missed Luna's playful antics and the larger wolf's watchful presence. Toby, ever the loyal companion, seemed to sense her melancholy and stayed closer than usual, his tail wagging whenever she looked his way. Bessie, too, seemed more affectionate, her large, gentle eyes watching Emma as if to remind her that she was never truly alone. Life on the farm returned to its usual routine, but for Emma, everything felt different. She had experienced something extraordinary, something that had changed her forever. The bond she had formed with the wolves had awakened a sense of connection to the natural world, a feeling that she was part of something much larger than herself. One morning, as Emma helped her father mend a fence in the pasture, she couldn't help but think about the wolves. "Do you think they're okay?" she asked, her voice quiet. Her father paused, his hands resting on the wooden post he was hammering. "I think so," he said, his tone thoughtful. "Wolves are resilient creatures. They know how to survive." Emma nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that their story wasn't over. She spent more time at the edge of the forest, her eyes scanning the trees for any sign of Luna or the larger wolf. Toby accompanied her on these visits, his ears perked up as if he, too, were hoping for a familiar face to emerge from the shadows. As autumn gave way to winter, the forest transformed into a snowy wonderland. The bare trees stood stark against the white landscape, their branches heavy with frost. Emma loved the quiet beauty of the season, but she couldn't help but worry about the wolves. The harsh weather made survival even more difficult, and she hoped they had found enough food to sustain them. One crisp afternoon, as Emma and Toby walked along the edge of the forest, they came across a set of tracks in the snow. Emma's heart leaped as she recognized the paw prints. They belonged to a wolf. "It's them," she whispered, her breath visible in the cold air. "They've been here." Toby barked softly, his nose to the ground as he followed the trail. Emma hesitated for a moment before deciding to follow. The tracks led deeper into the forest, the snow crunching underfoot as they walked. Emma's heart pounded with anticipation, her mind racing with possibilities. Were the wolves nearby? Had they come to check on her, just as she had checked on them? The trail eventually led to a small clearing, where the snow was disturbed as if a struggle had taken place. Emma's stomach churned as she noticed patches of blood staining the white ground. Her eyes darted around, searching for any sign of the wolves. Then she saw it, a dark shape lying in the snow. Emma ran forward, her breath catching as she recognized the larger wolf. Its body was still, its golden eyes closed. Emma knelt beside it, her hands trembling as she touched its fur. It was alive, but barely. "What happened to you?" she whispered, her voice breaking. The wolf's eyes fluttered open, its gaze meeting hers. Emma could see the pain and exhaustion in its expression, and her heart ached for the animal that had once been so strong and proud. Toby whined softly, his nose nudging the wolf's side as if urging it to get up. Emma looked around, her mind racing as she tried to figure out what to do. The wolf needed help, and she couldn't carry it back to the farm on her own. She stood, her resolve hardening. "Stay here," she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "I'll be back." Emma sprinted back to the farm, her legs burning as she pushed herself to go faster. She burst into the barn, grabbing a large blanket and a sled her father used to transport firewood. Her parents looked up in surprise as she entered the house to grab supplies. "Emma, what's going on?" her mother asked, concern etched on her face. "It's the wolf," Emma said breathlessly. "It's hurt. I found it in the forest. I need to help it." Her father frowned, his expression a mix of worry and disbelief. "Emma, you can't keep bringing wild animals here. It's dangerous." "Please, Dad," Emma pleaded, her eyes brimming with tears. "It's dying. I can't just leave it there." Her parents exchanged a long look before her mother sighed. "All right," she said, "but be careful. And don't go too far into the forest." Emma nodded, her heart pounding with gratitude. She loaded the sled with a blanket and supplies, then hurried back to the clearing. Toby followed close behind, his tail wagging as if he understood the urgency of the situation. When they reached the wolf, Emma knelt beside it, her hands gentle as she wrapped the blanket around its body. "We're going to get you out of here," she said softly. With Toby's help, she managed to lift the wolf onto the sled, her muscles straining under the weight. The journey back to the farm was slow and difficult. The sled's runners cut through the snow, leaving a clear trail behind them. Emma's breath came in short gasps as she pulled, her determination driving her forward. Toby walked beside the sled, his nose occasionally nudging the wolf as if to reassure it. When they finally reached the barn, Emma's father was waiting, his arms crossed over his chest. "You really brought it back," he said, his tone both impressed and exasperated. "It needed me," Emma said simply. "Just like Luna did." Her father sighed, then stepped forward to help her lift the wolf off the sled. They placed it gently on a bed of hay, the blanket still wrapped around its body. Emma knelt beside it, her hands brushing its fur as she whispered, "You're safe now." Over the next few days, Emma devoted herself to nursing the wolf back to health. She cleaned its wounds, fed it warm broth, and talked to it in soothing tones. Slowly but surely, the animal began to recover, its strength returning with each passing day. As the wolf grew stronger, Emma noticed a change in its demeanor. It seemed more at ease, its golden eyes watching her with a mixture of gratitude and trust. Toby and Bessie often kept the wolf company, their presence a source of comfort for the recovering animal. One evening, as Emma sat in the barn with the wolf, she heard a sound that made her heart leap, a low, familiar howl coming from the edge of the forest. She stood, her eyes wide as she realized what it meant. The wolf's pack had returned. She opened the barn doors, the cold night air rushing in as the wolf stood on shaky legs. It stepped outside, its golden eyes fixed on the trees where the howls had come from. Emma followed, her breath visible in the moonlight as she watched the wolf reunite with its family. The pack emerged from the shadows, their sleek forms illuminated by the silvery glow of the moon. Luna was among them, her golden eyes lighting up as she saw Emma. The pup bounded toward her, its tail wagging furiously as it licked her hands. Emma laughed, tears streaming down her face as she knelt to embrace Luna. "You came back," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The larger wolf nuzzled Emma gently, its body lean but strong. It let out a low growl, a sound that Emma understood as a thank you. The rest of the pack watched from a distance, their eyes wary but not hostile. As the wolves disappeared into the forest once more, Emma stood in the moonlight, her heart full. She had been given a rare gift, the chance to connect with creatures most people feared and misunderstood. And though she knew their paths might never cross again, she would always carry the memory of their bond. As she walked back to the farmhouse, Toby trotted beside her, his tail wagging. Bessie moved softly from the pasture, her calm presence a reminder of the strength and love that had carried them through. Emma smiled, her breath visible in the cold night air as she whispered, "Thank you, Bessie. Thank you, Luna. Thank you for everything." Winter deepened, blanketing the farm in a serene white stillness. The memory of the wolves lingered in Emma's heart, not as a painful ache but as a warm reminder of courage, compassion, and connection. She often found herself gazing at the edge of the forest, not out of longing but out of gratitude for the lessons the wolves had taught her. Life on the farm resumed its steady rhythm, but Emma was no longer the same. Her experiences had shaped her in ways that words couldn't capture. She felt braver, more aware of the interconnectedness of all living things. And though she didn't know if she would ever see Luna or the wolves again, she felt a deep sense of peace knowing they were thriving in their rightful place. One frosty morning, as Emma walked through the pasture to check on Bessie, she noticed something unusual. The cow, who was usually calm and content, was pacing near the fence, her large eyes fixed on the forest. Toby barked softly, his tail wagging as if he sensed something. "What is it, Bessie?" Emma asked, her breath visible in the chilly air. The cow let out a low moo, her head turning toward the trees. Emma followed her gaze, her heart skipping a beat as she saw movement in the shadows. A familiar silhouette emerged from the forest, Luna, her golden eyes shining like twin beacons. Emma's heart swelled with joy as she ran to the edge of the pasture, her footsteps crunching in the snow. "Luna," she called, her voice ringing out in the crisp morning air. The young wolf barked in response, bounding toward her with unrestrained excitement. Emma knelt down, her arms opening wide as Luna leaped into her embrace. The pup's fur was thick and warm, her tail wagging furiously as she licked Emma's face. "I missed you," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't think I'd see you again." Luna barked softly, her golden eyes filled with the same affection and trust Emma had seen in them before. Toby joined them, his tail wagging as he sniffed Luna curiously. The two animals quickly fell into a playful rhythm, their barks and yips echoing across the pasture. As Emma stood, she noticed more movement at the edge of the forest. The larger wolf appeared, its golden eyes locked on hers. Behind it were two other wolves, their sleek forms blending into the shadows. Emma's breath caught as she realized the pack had come to visit her. The larger wolf approached slowly, its posture calm and confident. Emma felt no fear, only a profound sense of awe. She knelt again, her hand outstretched as the wolf came closer. It nuzzled her hand gently, its warm breath misting in the cold air. "Thank you," Emma said softly, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "Thank you for trusting me." The wolf's golden eyes held her gaze for a moment longer before it stepped back, its head turning toward the forest. Luna barked once, her tail wagging as she looked between Emma and the pack. Emma smiled, her heart full as she watched the young wolf rejoin her family. The pack lingered for a moment, their forms silhouetted against the snow-covered trees, before disappearing into the forest once more. Emma stood there for a long time, the cold biting at her cheeks as she stared into the empty woods. She felt a sense of closure, knowing that the wolves had come back to say goodbye. It was a rare and beautiful gift, one she would treasure forever. As she returned to the farmhouse, Toby trotted beside her, his tongue lolling out in a happy grin. Bessie moved softly, her large eyes watching Emma with what seemed like approval. "I think they're going to be okay," Emma said, her voice soft but resolute. "And so am I." Winter eventually gave way to spring, the snow melting to reveal vibrant green fields and blossoming wildflowers. The farm came alive with the sounds of birdsong and the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. Emma felt a renewed sense of purpose as she threw herself into her chores, her heart lighter than it had been in months. One sunny afternoon, as she sat under the shade of a large oak tree, she found herself reflecting on the events of the past year. The wolves, Luna, Bessie, Toby, they had all played a role in shaping her into the person she was now. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the connection she had forged, not just with the animals, but with the natural world itself. As the days turned into weeks, Emma began to notice small changes around the farm. Birds built their nests in the trees near the pasture, their cheerful songs filling the air. Wildflowers bloomed in abundance, their vibrant colors painting the fields in shades of yellow, purple, and pink. Even the forest seemed more alive, its trees whispering secrets in the wind. Emma took these changes as signs of hope, reminders that life was always moving forward. She often wondered if Luna and the wolves were watching her from the shadows, their golden eyes keeping silent vigil over the farm. The thought brought her comfort, a sense of continuity that connected her to the world beyond her small corner of it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma sat on the porch with her parents, the warm glow of the setting sun casting long shadows across the fields. Toby lay at her feet, his soft snores punctuating the quiet. Bessie stood in the pasture, her silhouette a dark shape against the vibrant hues of the sunset. "I've been thinking," Emma said, breaking the comfortable silence. Her parents turned to her, their expressions curious. "I want to learn more about animals, about how they live, how they think, how we can help them." Her mother smiled, her eyes soft. "That sounds like a wonderful idea, Emma. You've always had a special connection with animals." Her father nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "You've shown a lot of courage and compassion, Emma. I think you could do a lot of good in the world." Emma felt a warm surge of pride at their words. She didn't know exactly what her future held, but she knew she wanted to make a difference. The wolves had taught her the importance of empathy and understanding, lessons she would carry with her for the rest of her life. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Emma made a silent promise to herself and to the wolves. She would honor their trust and their courage by dedicating her life to protecting the natural world. It was the least she could do for the creatures that had changed her forever. The months turned into years, and Emma's life unfolded in ways she could never have imagined. She went on to study wildlife conservation, her passion for animals guiding her every step of the way. She traveled to distant forests and plains, working to protect endangered species and preserve their habitats. But no matter where her journey took her, Emma always carried the memory of the wolves with her. She often told their story to others, sharing the lessons they had taught her about trust, resilience, and the power of connection. And though she never saw Luna or the larger wolf again, she felt their presence in every act of kindness and bravery she encountered. Back on the farm, Bessie lived out her days as a cherished member of the family, her calm and steady presence a reminder of the strength that comes from love. Toby remained Emma's loyal companion, his golden fur flecked with gray as he grew older but no less spirited. Emma's parents often remarked on how much she had grown, their pride evident in their every word. "You've made us so proud, Emma," her mother said one evening as they sat together on the porch, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and pink. "You've turned your love for animals into something truly meaningful." Emma smiled, her gaze drifting toward the forest. "I couldn't have done it without them," she said softly. "They showed me the way." As the stars filled the night sky, Emma felt a deep sense of peace. She knew her story wasn't over, it was only just beginning. And though the wolves were far away, she felt their presence in the rustling of the trees, the call of the birds, and the gentle breeze that carried the scent of the wild. In her heart, they would always be with her, guiding her every step of the way.